So when customs examiners ask you questions about warehouses, on the topic of warehouses, they usually identify warehouses. Sometimes they commingle them, intertwine them with other questions, such as foreign trade zones, for example, or entry procedures. But usually, when it comes to dealing with warehouses, we deal with two different parts of the Code of Federal Regulation Title 19. First part is Part 19, which deals with warehouses in general. It talks about so Part 19 here, Part 19, customs warehouses, container stations, and control of merchandise therein. So this is what they're talking about. Customs Part 19 deals with customs warehouses control. What type of warehouses there are, because there are various types of warehouses. Once the merchandise is inside the warehouses, what are the responsibilities of the warehouse proprietor? What are the responsibilities of customs? How other records should be kept, and how the merchandise should be stored, and what kind of things can be done to that merchandise. Those questions are addressed in Part 19 of the Code of Federal Regulations. Another part dealing with the warehouses is Part 144, warehouse entries and withdrawals. And this part talks about the delivering merchandise to the warehouse and taking the merchandise outside of the warehouse. So even though those parts are kind of far apart, they are very much related. And if you go through the customs broker exam questions on a single exam, for example, you will see one question that will come from here and the very next question that will come from here. Class 1 warehouse. What is it used for? Exam, seizure, pending final release. So customs looks at the product and they say this product is subject to trademark requirements, and we are not going to release it until we are sure that this particular trademark does not infringe on the rights of the rightful trademark owner. So before the merchandise is released, while then the investigation is going, it needs to be physically stored somewhere. In Class 7 warehouse, it can be used for domestic consumption too. So you can either export it or you can use it in home here in the United States. So looking at the question first, which of the following should you advise? And you can see drawback, warehouse, TIB, FTZ. So again, you look at the suggested answer list, you kind of get a sense that this is most likely the warehouse question. So let's look at the fact pattern. The client wants to refine the metal bearing ores from the African continent. The finished product from the plant will be for export only. Right. The client has a large shipment of metal bearing ores that is due to arrive to US within the next month to undergo a refining process. Your client wants to avoid payment of duty if possible. So again, what's the point here? It will be useful or export only. So if you import it in, you don't want to. It's going to be for export already. You don't want to pay duty, right? So there are various ways for you to avoid payment of duties. One of the possibilities is use of drawback. However, if you are not using enough of drawback, you only get 99% of duties. Plus, upfront you pay the duties, so it's a way of getting a refund. And the procedure is quite complex. It involves paperwork, it involves time, and it involves compliance with the formalities too. It may be just easier not to pay duties upfront in the first place. And one way of not paying duties upfront is upon the arrival of merchandise into the United States, you make the entry for warehouse 21. But what kind of warehouse? Well, Type 7 warehouse provides for smelting or refining of metal bearing material. We have refining metal bearing ore operation here in place. It's for export only, which is one of the criteria that fits the bill. And you have a class 7 warehouse in answer choice. So B is the correct answer. Maintenance of records. 5-year rule. Remember, 5-year rule, which was applicable to the licensed customs brokers. 5 years usually is from the date that record is required to be created. Here, the 5-year rule is required to be followed after the date of the final withdrawal under entry. So you can store the merchandise, then you can enter the merchandise, store it, let's say, for 5 years. So here is a entry 21, which is a warehouse entry. Here you have an entry 31, which is a withdrawal for consumption, right? So this, when the record keeping requirement clock starts ticking. Another rule in the case of the shortage, damage, or theft is you have 1% rule and $100 rule. When a shortage of merchandise is equal to 1% or more, or merchandise for which or merchandise for which over $100 in duties and taxes is owed. Notice, it's not $100 for merchandise as a value, it's $100 for duties and taxes of that merchandise. Is suspected of theft or is actually stolen. It is called extraordinary shortage or damage. So you have a label here, extraordinary shortage or damage. More than 1%, $100 in duties and taxes. If you have extraordinary shortage of damage, you must bring it to CBP attention immediately. So call up to customs and let them know. And do this confirm in writing within 5 business days. So 5 business day rule here repeats the 5 business day rule that we discussed in the first bullet points for the permit file folder.